The snowstorm had no mercy. Wind tore across the open land, lifting snow from the ground and throwing it back down like it meant to bury everything alive. The world had turned white, sky and earth melting into one endless sheet of cold. In the middle of it walked a young cowboy, bent forward, pushing step by step as if each one cost him something. His coat was thin and worn, his boots soaked through, his fingers stiff from the cold. He had been moving for hours, maybe longer. He no longer counted time. He only knew that stopping meant falling, and falling meant never standing again. His face was pale, his breath short, but he did not curse the storm or beg the sky for help. He kept walking because that was all he had left. There was no hope guiding him, only the need to survive the next few steps. The storm howled around him, alive and cruel, testing how much a man could endure before the cold finally won. Through the blur of falling snow, another shape appeared on the narrow path. A horse moved slowly and carefully, its head lowered against the wind. Sitting upright on its back was a woman, wrapped in a thick cloak, her posture calm even as the storm pressed hard around her. She saw the cowboy before he saw her. For a moment, she could have kept going. The road ahead was safer than stopping, and the cold showed no kindness to anyone who lingered. But she pulled the reins instead. She studied the man standing alone in the white, his strength slipping away with each breath. There was no fear in her face, only quiet concern. She climbed down, boots sinking into the snow, and walked toward him as if danger did not rule her choices. Her beauty was not loud or proud. It rested in the steady way she met his eyes and in the simple decision not to turn away when it would have been easier to do. So she did not speak much as she led him away from the storm. The shelter was small but solid, hidden from the worst of the wind. Inside, the air was still and dark, broken only by the soft crack of a fire she quickly built. Warmth crept back into his body in slow, painful waves. She laid blankets over his shoulders and gave him water, careful not to rush him. He kept his eyes low, aware of his torn coat and empty pockets, ashamed of how little he had to offer. She never looked at him with pity. She never asked where he came from or what he owned. They shared the quiet, letting the fire speak for them. He watched her movements, steady and sure. She watched his breathing ease as the color returned to his face. No promises were made. No comfort was spoken aloud. Yet in that silence, fear loosened its grip, replaced by something gentler. For the first time since the storm began, he felt safe enough to rest. When morning came, the storm had softened, but the cold still clung to the walls of the small lodge. The space was plain, built for use, not comfort. The cowboy moved through it quietly, keeping to corners, careful not to take more than he needed. His habits were simple and shaped by long days of hard work. He cleaned the ashes from the fire, checked the door, and set things in order, even though his body had not fully recovered. The woman moved differently. There was ease in the way she held herself, a calm care in every small action. He noticed how gently she poured water, how she folded a blanket as if it mattered. She noticed how he never wasted emotion, how he pushed through weakness without complaint. They came from different worlds, and both of them knew it, but neither treated the other as lesser. She did not look down on his rough ways. He did not feel small beside her quiet grace. What passed between them was not comfort or charm, but respect, slow and steady, taking root without either of them naming it. Later, as they shared a quiet meal, he spoke about his life because she asked, not because he wanted pity. His words were plain and careful. He told her he had no family left, that he learned to work young and never stopped. Every place he stayed was borrowed. Every job ended the same way, with him moving on before he could grow roots. He owned no land and carried no name that mattered to anyone. There was no anger in his voice when he said it. This was simply how his life had been shaped. He said he did not expect more, and maybe did not deserve it either. Once his strength returned, he planned to leave and find work somewhere else. He said it like a settled fact, not a sadness. She listened without interrupting, her eyes steady on him. And in that quiet space, it became hard not to wish the world had offered him more than endless roads and empty nights. As the days passed, she watched him move through. His work with the same steady focus he showed in the storm. He repaired small things around the lodge, chopped wood, and carried water without being asked. He never spoke about effort, only did what needed to be done. When he talked, he did not try to impress her or soften his past. He spoke honestly, even when the truth made him look small. She found herself listening closely, not just to his words, but to the pauses between them. Without drawing attention to it, she began leaving food ready when he returned tired, setting his coat near the fire, making sure he rested when his strength failed. She did not call it care. She did not name what was growing inside her. There were no promises and no open feelings, yet something warm settled in the quiet between them, built from simple acts and shared time. And though nothing was said, both of them began to feel that this place was no longer just shelter. One quiet evening, when the work was done and the fire burned low, she told him the truth. She did not raise her voice or wait for the right moment. She simply said it, calm and clear. She was the daughter of a king, and her home was not a lodge in the snow, but a kingdom far from these hills. Her father had no son, and the weight of what came next rested on her shoulders. The words struck him harder than the storm ever had. Shame rushed in before he could stop it. He looked down at his rough hands and worn clothes, and felt the space between their worlds open wide. He told her she should not be here, not with a man who owned nothing and had no future to offer. He began pulling back, speaking less, already planning his leave. She did not stop him. She did not plead or defend herself. She only watched him quietly, letting him face what the truth had stirred inside him. He left when the ground began to soften, when snow turned to thick mud that pulled at his boots with every step. He said little before going. He told himself that staying would only make things harder, that love was not meant for someone like him. Work was simpler. Work asked nothing but effort. She stood at the door and watched him walk away, her hands still at her sides. She did not call his name or ask him to stay. She understood that his leaving was not anger, but fear wearing a quiet face. The distance between them grew without words, stretched by empty days and longer nights. Silence settled where warmth had once lived. He carried his pain into labor, and she carried hers into waiting. Nothing cruel was said. Nothing was broken by force. Yet the hurt that followed was deep and steady, the kind that comes when two people care but believe they must walk separate paths. He spent years in quiet labor, each day building something more than just his body. He repaired fences, cleared land, and helped others when they asked, even when his hands bled and his back ached. Every task he took on, no matter how small, he finished with care, and people began to notice. They started following him, seeking advice, trusting his judgment, not because he had a name or money, but because he was steady, honest, and fair. He learned responsibility the hard way, by seeing the results of his choices and facing the consequences without complaint. Poverty did not break him. It sharpened him. Each sunrise found him stronger, calmer, and more capable than the one before. Slowly, his character became visible to all who crossed his path. Where once he had been just a quiet man working through storms, he now carried a presence that made people listen and trust. Respect came not from titles or wealth, but from years of effort, from hands and heart shaping a life worth following. The king came quietly, traveling without fanfare, to see the man who had grown from a stranger in the snow to someone the people now looked to. There was no ceremony, no special attention, only the king's steady gaze as he watched the cowboy move among the workers and neighbors. Tasks were given, problems arose, and the cowboy met each one without hesitation. He protected those who needed help, made choices that were fair even when they were hard, and put duty before his own pride. He did not boast, he did not ask for approval, but his decisions carried weight because they were measured and true. The people saw it and followed willingly. The king saw it too. Day by day, through quiet actions and careful judgment, he proved he could lead. When the king finally spoke, it was not words that mattered most. It was the trust the man had earned, the respect built not from birthright or title, but from every steady choice he had made. She found him one evening, not with demands or reminders, but with quiet patience. The sun was low, casting long shadows across the land he had built with his own hands. She asked him simply what he wanted. No hurry in her voice, no weight of expectation pressing down. For a long moment, He looked at her and felt the distance of all the years he had walked alone, the fear that had kept him small and careful. Then slowly he spoke. He admitted that he cared for her, that he had longed for her presence more than he had allowed himself to notice. Saying it out loud made him feel different, stronger, calmer, whole in a way he had never known. He no longer saw himself as unworthy or separate from her world. With that clarity, he chose her, openly and without hesitation, not because fate demanded it, not because it had been written for him, but because it was what he wanted. She did not need to answer. Her steady smile said everything. The day they were married was quiet, without grandeur or fanfare, yet full of meaning. He stood beside her, no longer a stranger to the world, no longer a man defined by the cold and the struggle. The kingdom welcomed him, not because he was born to it, but because he had earned his place through years of work, honesty, and steady judgment. He ruled with care, remembering every hardship that had shaped him, never letting pride or wealth guide his hand. She stood beside him at every step, not to lead him, but to share in the responsibility, her presence steady and calm. Their love did not announce itself with loud words or dramatic gestures. It was measured in quiet glances, shared decisions, and simple acts of care. Together they faced the people, the land, and the challenges ahead, not as ruler and subject, but as partners, and in that steadiness, they found a peace neither had known alone. Winter returned to the kingdom, soft and quiet. Snow fell over the hills and streets, blanketing the land as it had long ago. But now it felt different. He remembered the cold that had once cut through him, the storm that had left him alone and unsure of every step. He thought of how far he had come, not because someone saved him, but because he had endured, worked, and grown. Now he was never truly alone. She stood beside him through every challenge. Her presence steady, her care constant. Strength no longer meant facing the world by himself. It meant walking forward with someone he trusted, someone who trusted him in return. He watched the snow fall, feeling its chill and its calm, and understood that love did not lift a man by magic. It simply walked beside him, steady and patient, while he earned every step of his rise.